If you ask the average American what the optimal formula of longevity is, they probably couldn't tell you. They've probably heard of the South Beach diet or the Atkins diet, and you have the USDA food pyramid. There's what Oprah tells us. There's what Dr. Oz tells us. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of confusion around what really helps us live longer better. Should you be running marathons or doing yoga? Should you eat organic meat or should you be eating tofu? When it comes to supplements, should you be taking them? How about these hormones or resveratrol? And does purpose play into it? Spirituality, and how about how we socialize? Well, our approach to finding longevity was to team up with National Geographic and the National Institute on Aging to find the 4 demographically confirmed areas that are geographically defined, and then bring a team of experts in there to methodically go through exactly what these people do to distill down the cross-cultural distillation. And at the end of this, I'm going to tell you what that distillation is.
There's something or some things that the people in all of these places are doing that might be instructive for the rest of us?
In blue zones, people live a long time not because they pursue health. It's because it ensues. They live a long time because they live in an environment wherein their micro, unconscious decisions are slightly better all day long as a result of their surroundings. And if we want to see a healthier America, and as your listeners, if they want to live longer, lose weight, get more exercise, eat better, they'll get a far better return on their effort, time, and money by shaping their environment than they ever will by buying a gadget or thinking they're going to change their behavior for long enough to make any difference. They won't.
We found our first blue zone about 125 miles off the coast of Italy on the island of Sardinia, and not the entire island. The island's about 1.4 million people, but only up in the highlands, an area called the Nuoro province. And here we have this area where men live the longest, about 10 times more centenarians than we have here in America. And this is a place where people not only reach age 100, they do so with extraordinary vigor. Places where 102-year-olds still ride their bike to work, chop wood, and can beat a guy 60 years younger than them. Their history actually goes back to about the time of Christ. It's actually a Bronze Age culture that's been isolated. Because the land is so infertile, they're largely shepherds, which occasions regular low-intensity physical activity. Their diet is mostly plant-based, accentuated with foods that they can carry into the fields. They came up with an unleavened whole wheat bread called nota musica, made out of durum wheat, a type of cheese made from grass-fed animals, so it's hot. The cheese is high in omega-3 fatty acids instead of omega-6 fatty acids from corn-fed animals. This is a place where the oldest living female population is found. It's a place where people have the longest disability-free life expectancy in the world. They have what we want. They live a long time and tend to die in their sleep very quickly. And often, I can tell you, after sex. They live about 7 good years longer than the average American, 5 times as many centenarians as we have in America, 1/5 the rate of colon and breast cancer, big killers here in America, and 1/6 the rate of cardiovascular disease. And the fact that this culture has yielded these numbers suggests strongly they have something to teach us. What do? Once again, a plant-based diet full of vegetables with lots of color in them, and they eat about 8 times as much tofu as Americans do. Typically in America, we've divided our adult life up into 2 sections. There's our work life, where we're productive, and then one day, boom, we retire. And typically that is meant retiring to the easy chair or going down to Arizona to play golf. In the Okinawan language, there's not even a word for retirement. Instead, there's one word that imbues your entire life, and that word is ikigai. And roughly translated, it means the reason for which you wake up in the morning. And for this 102-year-old karate master, his ikigai was carrying forth this martial art. For this 100-year-old fisherman, it was continuing to catch fish for his family 3 times a week. And this is a question. The National Institute on Aging actually gave us a questionnaire to give these centenarians. And one of the questions, they were very culturally astute people who put the questionnaire. One of the questions was, what is your ikigai? They instantly knew why they woke up in the morning. We know that isolation kills. 15 years ago, the average American had 3 good friends. We're down to 1.5 right now. If you were lucky enough to be born in Okinawa, you were born into a system where you automatically have a half a dozen friends with whom you travel through life. They call it a moai. And if you're in a moai, you're expected to share the bounty if you encounter luck. And if things go bad, a child gets sick, a parent dies, you always have somebody who has your back. This particular moai, these 5 ladies have been together for 97 years. Their average age is 102. For this 102-year-old woman, her ikigai was simply her great-great-great-granddaughter. 2 girls separated in age by 101.5 years. And I asked her what it felt like to hold a great-great-great-granddaughter, and she put her head back and she said, it feels like leaping into heaven. I thought that was a wonderful thought. My editor at Geographic wanted me to find America's blue zone, and for a while we looked on the prairies of Minnesota, where actually there's a very high proportion of centenarians, but that's because all the young people left. So more significant than what they eat, it's how they eat it. They have all kinds of little strategies to keep from overeating, which, as you know, is a big problem here in America. A few of the strategies we observe, they eat off of smaller plates. So they tend to eat fewer calories at every sitting. Instead of serving family style, where you can sort of mindlessly eat as you're talking, they serve at the counter, put the food away, and then bring it to the table. They also have a 3,000-year-old adage, which I think is the greatest sort of diet suggestion ever invented. It was invented by Confucius. And that diet is known as the Hara Hachi Bu diet. It's simply a little saying these people say before their meal to remind them to stop eating when their stomach is 20% full. It takes about a half hour for that full feeling to go travel from your belly to your brain, and by remembering to stop at 80%, it helps keep you from doing that very thing.
The 5 pillars of every longevity diet in the world are whole grains, greens, tubers like sweet potatoes, nuts, and beans. In fact, if you're eating about a cup of beans a day, it's probably adding about 4 years to your life expectancy. They are eating some meat, but on average only about 5 times per month. Way less fish and fewer eggs than you would think. No cow's dairy in blue zones, by the way. And when they're drinking, it's mostly water, about 6 glasses a day, teas and coffee. Because if you want to know what a centenarian ate to live to be 100, you have to know what they were eating when they were 10 and when they were young adults and middle age and retired. You can't just ask a centenarian what they've been eating lately. And what emerges a very clear pattern, whether you're in Asia, Europe, Latin America, United States, they're eating 90 to 100% whole food plant-based.
In America here, life expectancy for the average woman is 80, but for an Adventist woman, their life expectancy is 89, and the difference is even more pronounced among men, who are expected to live about 11 years longer than their American counterparts. Now, this is a study that followed about 70,000 people for 30 years, sterling study, and I think it supremely illustrates the premise of this Blue Zone project. This is a heterogeneous community. It's white, black, Hispanic, Asian. The only thing they have in common are a set of very small lifestyle habits that they follow ritualistically for most of their lives. They take their diet directly from the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, where God talks about legumes and seeds, and on one more stanza about green plants, ostensibly missing his meat. Adventists also tend to hang out with other Adventists. So if you go to an Adventist party, you don't see people swilling Jim Beam or rolling a joint. Instead, they're talking about their next nature walk, exchanging recipes, and yes, they pray. But they influence each other in profound and measurable ways. This is a culture that has yielded Ellsworth Wareham. Ellsworth Wareham is 97 years old. He's a multimillionaire. Yet when a contractor wanted $6,000 to build a privacy fence, he said, for that kind of money, I'll do it myself. So for the next 3 days, he was out shoveling cement and hauling poles around. And predictably, perhaps, on the fourth day, he ended up in the operating room. But not as the guy on the table, the guy doing open heart surgery. At 97, he still does 20 open heart surgeries every month. These 100-year-old Okinawan women are getting up and down off the ground. They sit on the floor 30 or 40 times a day. The Sardinians live in vertical houses, up and down the stairs. Every trip to the store or to church or to the friend's house occasions a walk. They don't have any conveniences. There's not a button to push to do yard work or housework. If they want to mix up a cake, they're doing it by hand. That's physical activity. That burns calories just as much as going on the treadmill does. When they do intentional physical activity, it's things they enjoy. They tend to walk, the only proven way to stave off cognitive decline, and they all tend to have a garden.
The problem is, except for a few people like you with heroic discipline and a great community supporting you, it's very hard for Americans to go plant-based and whole food plant-based, by the way. It's not, Twinkies and chips. Whole foods, plant-based diet is the most important factor. But the only way to do that for the decades necessary to avoid a chronic disease is have the right social network, live in the right place, having that sense of purpose where it's important enough for you to be around that you're going to make the sacrifices occasionally to, not order the hamburger.
Yeah.